Okay, Kaushik, can we start now? Okay, good morning, friends. Welcome to this Maritime Archaeology group. Today we have Professor Ajit Kumar, formerly Professor and Head Department of Archaeology, Kerala University.
Yes, we can start.
Trivandrum. And we would like to thank him on behalf of the group for accepting to speak on the ancient port of Vizhinjam. Welcome, Professor Ajit Kumar. I will briefly introduce Professor Ajit Kumar, who has 35 years of experience in archaeology. He has undertaken several field expeditions and excavations. He was working in Archaeological Survey of India for several years. He completed his MA and PG diploma in archaeology and PhD. And he recently retired from the Department of Archaeology, University of Kerala. He has presented in numerous national level, state level, and international level conferences. He has also organized several international conferences. He has undertaken several research projects. He has visited several foreign countries and has a lot of experience in the archaeology of Kerala, art and architecture, and he has extensively worked on rock art of Kerala and published several books on rock art and forts of Kerala and several other subjects. We are really glad to have his expertise on this platform. I welcome Dr. Ajit Kumar to make his presentation. First, he will introduce the subject and then he will share his PowerPoint and explain us the concepts. Welcome, Professor Ajit Kumar. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Selva Kumar, for this introduction. And thank you for inviting me to present this lecture here in this particular forum. At the outset, Vizhinjam is now emerging as an international port of call. And if we examine the history of Vizhinjam, it takes us back to at least 2000 years, if not more. So here we will look into the history and archaeology of Vizhinjam, which is basically a sum up of the work which we have done at Vizhinjam. Personally, I myself and the department and the colleagues in the department who have done this work, I'm sharing it with you.
Yeah, can you share the PowerPoint now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have made you as the host. Now you can share the PowerPoint, please. Yeah.
Is it coming, PowerPoint?
No, now you click share screen and choose. You have to click on share screen. Yeah. Can you share now? Can you see the share screen at the bottom?
Yeah. Now what do I do? I just click screen?
Yeah, share screen. Yes.
Select.
Yeah.
Is it coming?
No. Yeah. We can see. Yes, please. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can go. Yeah, it is coming. It is coming. Okay. Yeah, now it's seen. Yeah, please.
Okay.
One minute, I'll make an announcement. I request the participants to mute their video as well as audio. Let only the speaker be on with video and audio so that all of us can hear the lecture peacefully. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, please speak, Professor Ajit. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Selva, for this invitation to present here. My presentation is titled Port Town of Vizhinjam Through the Ages. Vizhinjam is located around 14 kilometers south of Trivandrum and adjoins the famous beach resort of Kovalam to the south. Vizhinjam is today being developed as an international seaport and deep water container terminal. by the government of Kerala and the Adani Group. The literature and archaeological evidences indicate that the history of Vizhinjam as a port may go back to at least 2,000 years, if not more. Nearly 20 meters of natural depth of the sea close to the shore was the most advantageous factor behind the development.
Yeah, please proceed. Yeah, proceed.
Yeah, and nearly 20 meters of natural depth of the sea close to the shore was the most advantageous factor behind the development of Vizhinjam as a port. This is the map of Vizhinjam and location. Alapi, Ernakulam, Pattanam, Kannur, and a picture of the promontory at Vizhinjam, which extends into the into the sea. And beyond this, to the south, is a naturally deep sea, which is today being developed into a port. Now, even before the port construction, a weir was constructed, and large vessels could harbor very close to the shore at Vizhinjam. And this is the new harbor which is coming at terminal, which is coming at Vizhinjam, this is a conjectural picture of how the harbor would look once it is completed. But it is coming towards the south of the present fishing harbor. This is the present fishing harbor, and it's coming towards the south of the fishing harbor, where the sea is very naturally deep, roughly running into 20 meters. The territory of Nora, that is from around Kannur, which is identified, Nora is now identified with Kannur region, to the northern banks of Pamba, which was apparently to the northern banks of Pamba, was apparently with the Cheralaputras or Cheras, according to Pliny the Elder, during 1st century Christian era. Dating also to the 1st century Christian era is the work Periplus of Eurytherian Sea, and it states that the territory south of Pamba or ancient Baris is with the Pandyas. And in 2nd century CE, Ptolemy states that the same area being with Ai or Cheras. There was apparently some political alignment between Cheras, Ayas, and Pandyas during the early period. To repeat again, north from Kannur to around the banks of Pamba, where with the Cheralaputras or the Chera rulers, and this is this is also evidence from that the reference in Pliny's work and also in the work of Eurytherian Sea. However, in Ptolemy in 2nd century AD states that he also mentions about the Ai or Chera rulers ruling in this part of the year. So this nomenclature of Ai and Chera, it starts from around 2nd century AD and it continues even in later epigraphs. Also, you notice that some inscriptions you notice they are mentioned as I, and sometimes they are mentioned as Cheras. So I and Cheras were actually probably they were related by family, and that gave that is one of the reasons why the Cheras and Ayas are actually synonymously used. So I and Cheras are basically probably related by family and matrimony and things like that, and that makes I and Chera synonymous right from around 2nd century CE, and also in later epigraphs you notice that it is either referred to as I or Chera. Some scholars say that Periplus had not ventured beyond Nelkinda, which is identified, or Nelkinda and Porkad is identified with the Porka or the port town of Porkad, which is as it is now known, and Nelkinda is identified with the Nirnam area. And they say that some scholars say that Periplus had only ventured up to Nelkinda or Porkad, and the details which are there which are mentioned in his work were obtained from seafarers during his stay at Nelkinda or at Porkad. However, even if it is the information which he has collected through or from seafarers. Periplus mentions of Balita, a village by the sea with a naturally deep sea harbor besides it, and it has been identified with Vizhinjam by Shivraj Pilla. Shivraj Pilla was, I think, the first scholar to identify Balita with Vizhinjam. And similarly, Putanga tables, a map originally dating from around 2nd century CE, mentions of a place called Blinka, and just north of Komari. And it has been considered synonymous with Vizhinjam, which is often referred in Tamil epigraphs as by the name Vilindam and Vilinda. This is a map of, again, a map uh, of the coast of Kerala, and this gives you a map of the port towns mentioned by Periplus. So here you notice Nora, which is identified with the Kannur region, Tindus, then Muzaris, Bakre, and Nelkinda, and then the Red Mountains are identified with the Varkala region. So this town, if you go by the distance between Red Sea and Balita, it matches perfectly with Vizhinjam. And below south, further you have Komar. Komar is Kumri or Kanyakumari. So this is how Periplus of European Sea mentions of the port along the Malabar coast. So Balita is at the extreme south, just before Kumari or Kumar or Kanyakumari. This is a map of the Putanga tables. You will notice Blinka at the extreme south, and again traveling north you have Muziris, and further north you have Tindus, the famous temple of Augustus, which is depicted in this map. As mentioned earlier, Ai rulers were first referred to as early as 2nd century CE, and they were probably allies of the Pandyas, or they must have had some sort of matrimonial or other political alliances with the Pandyas. And Vizhinjam came into prominence when the Ai chieftains of Malayanaadu asserted their supremacy in the region and started to level up Vizhinjam as the capital and port town. Now, at least 4 major kings of this particular dynasty is known, namely Sadayan Karunandakan, Sri Vallabha, Vikramaditya, Varaguna, and Veerakota. And they are known from the Huzur office copper plates and the Palyam copper plates, which have been deciphered and published. Now, this is a map of Tamilakam, or the southern peninsular tip. You have Chola in the Coromandel coast, you have Cholas ruling in the north. Further south, you have Pandyas. And then further south, you have the Ayas, which are basically they centered around the Podi mountains and in the southern parts of today's Tirunelveli district and parts of Kanyakumari district is their basic territory. And there are many opinions as to where their original home was. Some people would say that Ayakudi was their original home, which was close to the Kotralam area, and from there they migrated into Vizhinjam and things like that. And further north along the west coast was the Venad dynasty. So Nanjinad, as it is known today, is basically the area where the Ayas had established their rule right up to the region right up to the Kanyakumari or the peninsular tip of India. Now, Pandyas were the one who initially started invasions into Malayanaad. The Kalugamala inscriptions of Parantaka Nedalayan, alias Maran Jaden, who is datable between 780 and 815 CE, states of attacking the Aya territory and the destruction of a fortification built by the Ayas at Arivur. And this king's Velkudi grants, or the Madras copper plate grants, also mentions about their attack or Nedunjarian attacking the Ayas in Vizhinjam area. And this is probably because the Pandyas didn't want Vizhinjam to develop as a port under the Ayas, because any port, if it races into prominence, it would affect the prospectus of the ports which were flourishing in the Pandya territory just across the eastern shores or in the Coromandel coast. So Pandyas probably were averse to the development of Vizhinjam port because it would affect their trade, especially from Korkai, which is also considered to be an important center of trade right from early period, and also one of the important commodities traded was pearls. After the Cholas became powerful, the Cholas also started to conduct trade into the Vizhinjam region. And Parantaka once started it, and it was followed by Rajaraja, Rajendra one, Veera Rajendra. They all made inroads into Malaynad and attacked Vizhinjam. And it is not that they only attacked Malaynad or Vizhinjam, they had also attacked other major trading centers like Kollam and also the Kodungalur area, which was under the Cheras, were all the ports which were under early settlers, were also attacked by Parantaka, Rajaraja, and Rajendra and Veera Rajendra. All these people had attacked all the major port towns, because the port towns were also actually hub of trade activities, and also the hub of all the wealth that was pouring into the state as such. So basically, that is one of the reasons for these both the Pandyas and the Cholas conducting a disastrous raid into Malaynad. And after they left, after these Cholas and Pandyas left back into their territory, these Cheras and Ay rulers got back into business as usual and perpetuated trade. So there was always, a give and take, because in inscription it is mentioned that though the hegemony vested with Pandyas and Cholas for some time, the Ayas probably had some sort of independent uh, uh, independency in handling the trade aspects. And that is how we notice that the Tirupati Saram temple, which is in Kanyakumari district, indicates that Vizhinjam bore the name Rajendra Solapatnam in the year 304 Kollam era, or equivalent to 1129 or 1129 CE. This inscription is dated to 1129 CE, and in 1129 CE, a trader from Vizhinjam gives a donation to this temple, which is recorded in the temple. And it is interesting to note that Rajendra had made his incursions in 1012, between 1012 and 1044. But interestingly, even in 1129, that is even the beginning of the first quarter of the 12th century also, that name of Rajendra Solapatnam remains in that area. And subsequently, after Kolotunga's invasion, this town or this Vizhinjam port, as Patinam would indicate, a trading town. And interestingly, after Rajendra Solapatnam, then the area gaining the names Rajendra Solapatnam, it was also subsequently named as Kolotunga Solapatnam after Kolotunga Sola invaded and captured this area. And this name Kolotunga Solapatnam is supposed to have remained at least till 13th century CE. And this not only recalled the capture of Cholas of the port at Vizhinjam, probably they exerted some sort of remembrance of the activities of the Cholas that took place during the earlier period. Now, the Pandya records and the Chola records are not specific sometimes to who is the Aya chieftain or the Chera ruler they have defeated actually. So either they mention his Aya in some of the inscriptions, and also sometimes they mention that they defeated Chera in Malayanad, and such references are found. They are not specific by name. And what was the true reasons behind such constant attacks? Because some of these early rulers were also connected matrimonially. The Cheras, the Pandyas, and the Cholas were also connected matrimonially. So, what led to one ruler, making an incursions into territory of the other is not clear. But as I said earlier, after every attack, there was a resurrection in this area of Malayanad, and trade continued as usual. So, in inscriptions of Pandyas and Cholas, especially Rajaraja and Rajendra Chola, we have reference to lot of material, wealth being looted and taken to Tamil Nadu after the invasion of the Malayanad territory, and uh, after the capture of Vizhinjam, Kollam, and the Mahadevarpattanam, or the main port towns after the invasion of the major port towns. A lot of wealth was carried across by these rulers into Tamil Nadu, and as we know that Rajaraja had donated a large chunk of his gains received from some of the wars here into constructing the temple at Tanjavur, and also both the temples at Gangaganda Cholapuram also received donations of various kinds received from the attacks of Malayanad. And similarly, the Tanjavur Brideshwara temple also is supposed to have received large number of donations and material and wealth towards its construction and maintenance. And epigraphs and literature are silent on what exactly was the reason behind this attack, but there are also Tamil works like Pandi Kovai, Ayanar, Hapurul Urai, Vikram Sola Ula, and they have references to Vizhinjam and the riches and fortifications, which is mentioned, which was here is mentioned in these works. Now, after the Cholas, the Vena dynasty emerged with Kollam as its capital, and Vizhinjam probably then acted as a feeder port to it. For a brief period of time, the Portuguese, Dutch, and the British had operated from Vizhinjam, though by then Kolachal further south also emerged as an active port. So Vizhinjam was later planned as a fishing harbor by Balrama Maharaja initially, but by the time he started up the work, he had allotted finance sources for taking up this work. But subsequently, with India becoming independent and the Cochin and Travancore becoming a single state, some of this work of this fishing harbor could not be pursued further. And political incursions and the tryst with foreign powers have also led to cultural interaction between the two regions and people from the powers from abroad, and they have left some of their reflections there at Vizhinjam. And if we go by structural elements still present at Vizhinjam, there is a rock cut temple at Vizhinjam, which goes to the Pandya period. And there are also some structural temples, a few loose sculptures, which clearly show influences of the Pandya and Chola tradition. And apart from that, of the later period, there are also churches, mosques, and a dargah, which are all recently renovated, and these structures also denote the religious beliefs prevalent in this region. And it is interesting to note that all these religious structures, these temples of ancient period, the rock cut cave there, the churches, mosques, dargah are all located very close to the Vizhinjam harbor. So in ancient times, it was basically mandatory that, or it was a custom to pay respects to the gods before venturing into uh, long long distance maritime activity. So that is probably one of the reasons why we see all these religious structures in close proximity with the port there. And now we will examine the evidences from Vizhinjam that have emerged from explorations and excavation in the region. Now, this is the rocket edifice at Vizhinjam. You have on the left of the doorway, you have Shiva as Kirata Murti, or Shiva as a hunter. And on the right side, you have Shiva and this is incomplete rather, and Shiva and probably Parvati standing, and Shiva is dancing, and Parvati as an onlooker. And this is an incomplete image, and there is an image of Vinadhara Dakshina Murti, which is basically a loose image. This is the Vinadhara Dakshina Murti, which is kept within this cellar. This is just a huge boulder in which this has been attempted. It is incomplete, and this particular Vinadhara Dakshina Murti is a later installation into this particular rocket shrine. There are also some loose images in the vicinity. This image of Shasta is also found from the Vizhinjam. They are very stylistically similar, and they belong to 8th, 9th century. Now, there were actually, there are 4 to 5 temples around Vizhinjam, which can be dated in the bracket of 8th, 9th century. And these are actually 2 temples which were located at Vizhinjam. And this temple was in the possession of the Devasam board. There were no idols uh, inside these temples. However, a huge banyan tree grew around this particular temple, and so it was in a way protected. Subsequently, a lot of newspaper reports coming, reporting of these sort of damages being done to this temple. This huge banyan tree on the top was chopped out, and it was actually removed. It remained in that condition for some time after the removal of the plant of the roots of this particular banyan tree. But however, subsequently, again due to neglect, the tree started growing back. In this rains, around 4 months back, 3 months back, this particular temple has finally collapsed. And I don't know if Devasam board has any plans to reconstruct it. Now there are also few other temples which, like I stated earlier, these 2 are also ancient temples. This is this temple is dedicated to a Devi or a goddess, and this appears to have been an ancient Saptamatrika temple, because there are loose images of Saptamatrikas around this temple. There is also a image of Shiva there, and this temple is dedicated to Shiva. It is, they are very small temples, and also not of the typical type of the Kerala temples. It has got the Dravidian style, which is an implication, or which shows that there was these temples have been built during the Pandya and Chola incursions into Vizhinjam. So it holds a style not typical of Chola, not typical of Pandya, but they have essentially tried that Dravidian style here. And this temple also must have had a spire on top, which is actually collapsed, and now today it is flat roofed. And there are some. This is a temple now protected by the state archaeology department. Initially, they had no, canopy and things in front, but recently the Devasam board, which manages that temple affairs, have also raised a canopy in front of, our mandapa in front of this. There are also a church here. There is an inscription in this church which dates around 1875 or so. So showing that this structure is relatively new, but there was a temple, there was a church probably dating to the late 19th century here. Almost contemporaneous with this old church was this mosque. This mosque was demolished and a new one has been constructed. But this had followed the typical uh, Kerala style of architecture in its thing, with few elements of European elements also creeping into it. But this was the flat roof, sloping roof type of the model with a typical, small porch with kakshas and orsia for people to sit and things like that. But this has been unfortunately demolished, and there is no record of these. Um, uh, this church.
Professor Ajit, just a minute.
Yeah.
Can you there are some people in the waiting room. Can you let them in? Yeah, just a second. Thank you.
New share, is that?
No, no, it is in the participants admit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can proceed.
Okay, so this mosque, which is there, which you notice here in this picture, is no more there. It was a typical. It had a very beautiful mixture of both some European elements and also it had this sloping typical Kerala roof. However, this has been demolished and a new one has been constructed. Apart from the structures which I showed you, there must have been other temples around the place because we noticed a Shivlinga in a boundary wall which was constructed, close to the fishermen's colony there. And they had stated that this is a mile post. So they actually didn't know what it was like. So we kept that as a secret because if we had told them it is a Shivlinga, it was in the compound wall of a community who would not have allowed it to be remain there. They would have easily taken this and thrown it into the sea. So we kept it as a secret, and we also initially stated that it would have been a milepost. Left it there, and finally, once we started the excavation, we got it removed from the compound wall, which had this particular Shivlinga and reconstructed and gave them a compensation for removing this particular Shivlinga. And today, this Shivlinga is housed in our museum. Uh, Even though kings and temples do not find mention in Pandya and Chola inscriptions, the fort situated at Vizhinjam finds mention in both the inscriptions of Pandyas as well as the Cholas. The Madras copper plate of Pandya king Nedunchalian, dated to his 17th year, in lines 36 to 41, describes Vizhinjam as at the town which has three waters of the sea for its moat or ditch, and whose strong and high walls rub against the inner parts of the receding sea, rise so high that the sun has to retiring his course, which is as strong and beautiful as the island of Lanka, and whose lofty walls and halls and walls are resplendent with jewels. So, in a sense, that what we understand from this description in Madras Museum copper plate of Nedunchalian is that the town had a fort, and the fort had waters of the sea uh, uh, nourishing it, and the walls of the fort was very tall and it almost touched the sky. And in a Super Bowl they say that even sun had to retire or move away from his basic course because the walls were so high. And it has been compared to the fort at Lanka, which was basically an island fort. So the basic thing is that there was a fort. Its moat contained seawater, and it was very tall edifice and beautifully constructed. And a similar inscription description also occurs in the Thiruvalangad copper plates of Rajendra Chola, dated to his 6th year, that is between 1016 and 1070. In verse 79, he speaks of Rajendra Chola's command in capturing the impregnable fortress at Vilinda or Vizhinjam. And the fort is again here also described as the moat of this particular fort was the sea, and its ramparts were very extensive and glorious and high. So it was almost impregnable to the warriors. So the description given in Madras Museum Copper Plate and also the Thiruvillanadu copper plates of Rajendra Chola give a similar account that there was a fort in Vizhinjam which had very tall walls. It was very high, and the moat of this particular fort was uh, the sea itself. Though it is found conspicuously described in inscriptions and also in literature, and no logical identification of where this fort was located at Vizhinjam was earlier noticed, or there was no uh, reporting of such a fort at Vizhinjam. And this encouraged us to take up archaeological explorations in the area, which eventually led to uncovering the fort and its location and features. Now, when we went about initially looking about the fort, we first tried to try and trace place names which either reflected kota or madil and or any sort of enclosure sort of name retained in its ancient name. So we found 2-3 places in Vizhinjam, very close to the sea, where such names were observed. One name and one place was named Kotaparam, and Kotaparam again. Kota would indicate a fort, so we went around in Kotaparam, but there were some few walls, very massive walls, which were noticed. But the construction of the style of construction and the other monuments related in that area seem to be only dating to the colonial period. So that didn't seem fruitful, and also the area did not seem like an island, or there was no way that there was a sea around that particular area. So that area didn't turn fruitful. Now the second area which we went into this thing was an area called Madalpuram, and it was also known as Marundakotai. So this area was the second focal point of our you know um, uh, survey and inquiry. So what turned out was this is the area which is located very close to the sea, and this area was known as Marundakotai. So we tried to figure out why it with the locals why it is known as Marundakotai. So they said that there were medicinal plants growing here, so it was known as Marandakotai and things like that. And they also say there were some walls around here. That is why that is known as also Madilpuram, or the area where certain walls existed. Now, when we went around when we started the work, when I started the work basically in 97, 98 and things like that, this whole this area was basically slushy. And this is the landmass. And if we had to cross, we had to walk around all this landmass to the corner and then enter into this area. It's only subsequently that the road was laid in the post-independence period. In the road was laid and connectivity into this island formation was around. Now, what was noticed then was this whole area to the east. This was basically an island. The whole area towards the east was a slushy area, and then there was a channel which opened back into the sea at the north. So these are actually modern structures which were built. So the sea was actually much closer surrounding this island. So this gave a perfect match to the description which was found in Pandya and Chola epigraphs. And we concentrated our exploration in this particular island-like formation with the channel around. And what we noticed close to this the sea was there were actually structures or walls around constructed at different elevations. So trying to find out from the locals there, people were not aware of who had actually constructed these walls. So along the western areas, we notice these walls, and now we try to trace the continuity of this wall. And at the northwestern corner, we notice that the fort walls were built out of rubble, and also the corner bastions built out of lateritic blocks were noticed. Now, this particular block, after this, beyond this, there was this natural channel, and we noticed that this wall was running east, and in that area it was highly vegetated, and it was all covered by vegetation. And just to see if there is a continuity of this wall running east from the northwestern corner, we cleared the vegetation, and finally, once we cleared the vegetation, we were able to bring out the evidences of the fort, which is mentioned in the literary work. So in some places we could notice a rubble construction, intact. In some places it has been disturbed. The the veneering which is there externally out of rubble stones have been removed, and however you can notice some lateritic constructions here and there in that area. So these are again the remains of the fort which were uncovered after the clearance of the debris. Also along the whole eastern stretch also you can notice the fort wall at many places which have been destroyed over the years. Now, while we were on exploring for the fort, we also noticed that there was some habitation mounds also very close to this area. So we tried to take up excavations in this area. The first season was, basically funded and held by Robert Harding, who was from Cambridge University. And though I was the director, he was the co-director of the excavation in the first season. And we put a trench at the mound, which is seen in this picture, and it yielded very interesting results. We subsequently continued the excavation for three seasons. The second and third season were funded by the university to take up excavations, and the department continued the activities for 3 seasons. And what emerged during this excavation, as structural formations, we could not find many structural formations. Is apart from a few stray, lateritic blocks being used to construct some primitive structures. Also, rubble masonry work also was noticed with floor levels in 1 or 2 trenches, but no interesting structural structures were found during the excavation as such. And after the excavations of the at Vizhinjam, during the course of the excavation itself, we had collected charcoal samples from the lowest levels in trench 3, and it was forwarded to Beta Analytic for dating. And they returned with a date of around 260 to 280 AD, and also a date of 325 to 420 for the early levels. And there were other 6 samples which were sent, and some of them gave the date between 7th century and 11th century. These dates perfectly matched with the materials which we had found at Vizhinjam. And on the basis of both the material finds and from the C14 dates, we divided the stratigraphy into 3. The period 1 of early historic and early medieval period, dating from around 1st century AD to around 800 AD, and followed by period 2, which is basically the medieval period, followed by from around 9th century to around 16th century, and the late medieval period in representing period 3, which is basically around 16 to around modern times. This is another way or map of how this has been sequenced, from how this material have been sequenced from around 1st century AD to the recent times. Now, the material reminds, reiterating the fact that Vizhinjam was habited during the early historic times, at least apart from the the seafood dates, are the evidences of rouleted ware which has been found in Vizhinjam. And this particular pottery has been already reported from many sites in earlier from Arakamadu, now recently from Pattanam excavations, and it has got a typical period of its occurrence. And this pottery has been found in port towns, especially, or trademarks, because it traveled through trade from different parts from the eastern coast. So we have found this very fine ware a rouleted ware, and also ware with this rouleting on it. So confirming that Vizhinjam was habited also, or Vizhinjam had trade contacts with the Coromandel and eastern coast during early historic times. Now, apart the only thing that hinted at an early antiquity of Vizhinjam was the coin of Ptolemy, who ruled between 285 and 246 BC. Now, this coin has been reported by G. Francis Aratel, and he says that this was found with a jeweler who hailed from Vizhinjam, and he had this opportunity to photograph this. But the current whereabouts of this coin is not known, and if it has been reported or it has been discovered at Vizhinjam and leading to its possession by the jeweler, uh, the antiquity of Vizhinjam would go back to at least further to around 3rd century BC or 1st century BC, based on this coin, but no other archaeological evidences apart from this coin comes from that particular sequence and excavation. Now, another interesting, I'm only showing you very few specimens on screen. Another interesting pottery which we found is the shards of Torpedo Jar. Now, Torpedo Jar is basically a classification brought by Robert Tomber to these vessels which used to carry fish sauce or wine from the Arabian Peninsula, and in various places it has been reported. What is interesting is that there is a fuse which you see at the base, and now this fuse, 2 or 3 of these fuses have been noticed from excavations at Vizhinjam, and also we noticed that there are other shards with the typical bitumen coating which is seen inside these pottery, which is basically to this bitumen core coating or the tar coating is done basically to reduce the porosity of this particular vessel so that it can carry liquid or fish sauce or olive oil or things like that. So it's basically a container to transport liquid, and it has been reported from the Persian Gulf region, from Iraq and Iran. So essentially, it basically brings in the connectivity between these two regions. Again, various shards of Torpedo Jar which have been found with the bitumen coating inside, and they vary also in thicknesses. So it is not that they were all jars; they were probably also jars of very different sizes also used to transport these materials. Apart from that, we have also the turquoise glazed ware, which has been found in large numbers in from Vizhinjam. Very rarely, we also notice some of these turquoise glazed for having bitumen coating within it also. But here also, the shape, decoration, thicknesses, the shades of this turquoise shade also varies in, in, in various colors. It is observed. It's quite possible such container jars were used to transport material of liquid or other material during early period, and these are actually remains of uh, those type of vessels, transport vessels. Now, apart from the basic torpedo jars and the turquoise glazeware, we've got a large number of Chinese pottery from Vizhinjam. And the earliest Chinese pottery is the Changsha ware, which is from Yunnan province and dated to 9th century. So this is the first time that we have got, the Changsha Ware from Honam province dating to 9th century in Kerala coast. So that is interesting. And subsequently to that, we have also transportation jars dating from around 9 to 13th century, and also various type of wares. Polychrome is there, porcelain is there, and we have also later pottery, which is basically the blue and white which is dated from 16th to 19th century. But this needn't have come here directly due to the Chinese, because after the Portuguese came here in the 15th century, the Portuguese started handling, the influencing the Chinese trade. So it is quite possible that the Chinese porcelain of later period, it was brought here by the Portuguese during their trade with Far East. Now, this is an example of the Shanza ware. These are actually typical bowls, and this brown color, which is noticed in four corners, is typical of the Shanza pottery, and this is datable to Tang period. And you know that during Tang period, the Pallavas also had started trade with China, and subsequently the Pandyas and Cholas also had started off trade with China. And once we observe these pottery here, it is for sure that the Chinese had also made the foray into the west coast, especially Malanada and with Vizhinjam and uh, Kollam acting as two major ports of the Malanada. Because even in the Christian encyclopedia, it is mentioned that by around 7th century, 6th century, even Kollam had become an important trading destination. So these two ports, Vizhinjam and Kollam, had actually acted as two major important ports of the IS uh, during early period. Now, Shanza pottery, close of it. These are the ones which were actually discovered from a shipwreck in Indonesia. So this is how it would have come in its intact position. This would be the nature of the shallow bowl or plate which has been found from Vizhinjam look like. Apart from that, you have also uh, pieces of these large jars. This is the spout which has been found, and you notice also these particular leaf-like decorations which you see on the thing, and the handle. So the handle, the spout, and the decorations which you these leafy appendages which you see on the body of the this thing has been found from a Vizhinjam of Tang period. Shanzava. These are again transportation jar which date from 9th to 13th century. You have these small handles also here attached. These are these are actually, I'm trying to show you the two sides of those or rivers or the lateral and the Siladon from Shanzai, Jiang province, dating to around 11th, 12th century. The polychrome stoneware, now again dating to around 12th century. The Qingmei porcelain from South China, dating to around 14th century. Blue and white, dating to 16th century. Blue and white again, dating to 17th century. And apart from the Chinese, we've also got European ware. We've got the Dutch pottery shirts from here, and which would have been of some of these tablewares, which would have looked like this. We have also transfer ware dating to the British times, found from Vizhinjam. This is the castle which is depicted over the transfer ware. Apart from this, there's a large collection of local ceramics found from Vizhinjam, generally redware, the typical fish pot which you notice even today. And apart from that, you have a lot of local pottery also have emerged during the excavations. And the foreign pottery compared to the local ware is very minuscule. But yes, they are very typical of the place of origin, and its date is well known. So that's more reasonably datable than this local ware, which shows a continuity in style in many a times. So it becomes unless they are properly associated uh, and classified, it becomes very difficult to date these local pottery. Apart from the pottery, you've got glass beads of various kinds which have been reported from the excavation. Glass beads, there's the eye bead, various type of glass beads. Then you have also quartz beads and also a carnelian bead which has been reported in the excavations there. Apart from that, we have also glass objects, personal ornaments of bangles of every type, bottles, and they range from the later medieval period mostly. So uh, you have glass containers, glass bottles, sometimes even ink pots of a rather recent origin, glass objects of various types. Iron objects of various types have also been reported. We have also noticed iron crucible, which clearly would indicate that there was some sort of iron working, and most of it are iron nails of various dimensions. Copper objects are also there. Sometimes copper nails and such objects are also there. Tiles of various nature found from Vizhinjam. It is interesting to note that tiles were generally noticed close to a temple, which was there in that site, and it is not found in the normal habitation which we excavated. But these tiles were noticed close to a temple where we had laid some trenches. There is also a stone lamp which was found from that same area. Bones of various natures were found from that area, and this has been analyzed by Abhen. So he has come out that the bones include cattle, sheep, hare, dog, cat, rat, and also human bones have been found from the excavations. Now, what are the possible items of export and import? Exports from Vizhinjam was probably as usual from the Malabar coast, pepper and other spices. There was probably cloth, and cloth was also exported up to around 19th century also. It was also exported during British period and even up to 19th century. This in the pre-independence period, it was even exported to Sri Lanka, as some of these elders in that area would say. So cloth, varied types of cloth was uh, my thing of export. There was iron implements which were produced at Vizhinjam. Vizhinjam and its surroundings have yielded a large number of iron ingots, clearly showing that there were, iron manufacturing or implements of iron were made at Vizhinjam. And inscription says that the chief's arms maker of the Aya dynasty was stationed at Vizhinjam. So Vizhinjam and surroundings were also manufacturing center for iron implements, because as a place of as a capital city, it was also, as we noticed that it was subjected to invasions of Cholas and Pandyas. So it was obvious that they also needed a large number of arms for their own protection, and the Ayas were well equipped with armory is also evidence from the inscription of the Pandyas. They say that during the war with the Aya kings, they themselves, the Pandyas, are also lost some of their heroic warriors, and it is recorded in inscription. So Ayas was no doubt no means a very feeble dynasty as such, who could be easily conquered, because even after there are inscriptions which say that even after the initial incursions into Vizhinjam, Pandyas were sometimes encamped in the outskirts for nearly 10 years to make advent into in the Ayat territory and finally defeat them. So Ayaz was no means a very a very simple dynasty to conquer. So iron implements or chera iron was also very sought out, even in the Roman period, and also in later period, iron implements of good quality steel manufactured in Kerala was very sought after in the markets in Iran and Iraq and also in China. So iron implements were also manufactured and probably exported from Vizhinjam. Apart from that, we have also pearls, beads, and semi-precious stones and glass objects being probably exported from Vizhinjam. Even in 18th century, report says that pearls were actually fished out from the waters very close to Vizhinjam, and also it used to be brought from the Kanyakumari region for export. So pearls or precious and semi-precious stones of various nature were also probably exported from Vizhinjam, and vegetative products like wood and high quality wood also was probably exported. Apart from that, coconut, coir, gum, oils, dye, rice also seems to have been exported from Vizhinjam, because in one of the inscription there is a description that Vizhinjam, the capital with rice fields, has been conquered. So rice fields must have existed very close to Vizhinjam and in the fertile plains of Vizhinjam, and probably these also were actually subjected to exports. And there were also animals like elephants, monkeys, fancy birds, and or the parts of these animals like tusk, feather, honey, tortoise shells. These are also actually items of exports from Vizhinjam. So this has also been referred from other coastal port towns also. These things were highly sought for by both the people from the Arabian region and also Persian Gulf. So these are actually very important products which came from there. Apart from the other things, marine products would have included dry sauce, shells, and corals also. Even up to modern times, shells are actually fished out from the waters close to Vizhinjam, and it is exported to Kanyakumari. So even in ancient times, shell products and corals could have been dealt as exports from this. And there are also salt farms in Kanyakumari district which supplied salt to the capital city and also for export. So these are probably the items which are exported. These are actually, I take these references from various inscription of which mentions to these items. So these were probably the things of export from Vizhinjam. And imports from into Vizhinjam could have been Arabian dates, perfume, frankincense, horses, and camels. Since war was, constant phenomena between Cholas and Pandyas and Ayers, horses and camels also were probably brought into this region. Wine, fish products, luxury tableware, porcelains, metal like copper, lead, and olive also were also probably part of the import into India. Now, there are interesting representations that horses were, this is a representation from Hampi, where you notice that the Iranians bringing horse and being presented before the king as an object of trade. Similar representations of, a ship with mooring close to the sea. And this is from Arabian Rayar temple in Tirukkurangudi in Kanyakumari district. And I have a doubt whether it's in Kanyakumari or in Tirunelveli district. Anyway, this
Tirunelveli.
Tirunelveli. So this particular depiction shows a ship anchoring and camel, elephants, horses, etc., and other precious material being taken and presented before the king as such. So this has already been written about by Adyaman. So I'm not going into details, but it definitely shows that horse was also one of the important items of import into this region. And close to Vizhinjam, there is a place called Kudirapandi, very close to the harbor. Kudira means horse, Pandi means stable. So that the name of that place is still retained as Kudirapandi, which clearly shows that there was a stable at Vizhinjam, close to the port. So some observation on the artifacts at Vizhinjam. Archaeological artifacts recovered from Vizhinjam indicate that trade contacts with the region extending from West Asia to Far East, reaching China. The trade with Persian Gulf had an earlier beginning if shards of Torpedo Jar and Turquoise glazed ware found can be dated in par with those from Anuradhapura, and which we have also got a carbon 14 dating showing the 3rd, 4th centuries, or we have got a carbon 14 dating from Vizhinjam. And we have also Changsha Ware from Yunnan province dating to 9th century, which corresponds with the reign period of the Ai dynasty at its peak in Vizhinjam. We have also Lusher Ware from Persian Gulf. This is it's a very costly type of pottery, and the shards being found at Vizhinjam clearly indicates that there was a elite population which could afford Lusher Ware from Persian Gulf. And because of the constant attack between Pandyas and Cholas, the Ayas declined in power, and there was also a lack of strong kings from this dynasty subsequent to 10th century, and hence the activities at Vizhinjam declined. So once the Vizhinjam dynasty declined because of the constant onslaught of the Cholas, and the Wayanad chieftains become assertive at Kollam, because much of the trade activity, because of the constant attack, was being affected at Vizhinjam. So Kollam acted as a subsidiary fort. When Vizhinjam was in prominence, Kollam actually acted as a feeder fort. But subsequent to the diminishing of the powers at Vizhinjam, Kollam emerged as an important port town, and Vizhinjam became a feeder port town to Kollam, and it came to be developed by the Wayanad chieftains. So Wayanad, once it gains prominence, then Vizhinjam subsides in its importance. And even in subsequent periods, some sort of trade activities during Portuguese and Dutch and British times continued from the port of Vizhinjam. But major trade discontinued, and Vizhinjam came to be developed as a fishing harbor once Kollam rose into power. It would be very ideal if we have a museum at Vizhinjam displaying the rich maritime history of the region of Vizhinjam. Once the sport comes, there will be a lot of visitors also coming, and the adjoining area is Kovalam. So it will be interesting if we can have a museum organized at Vizhinjam, which can display the rich maritime history of the region once the sport comes in. Acknowledgements, thanks to Roberta Harding, Dr. Ranzang, Zahi, Henessa Saki, Roberta Tombert, K. Krishnan, colleagues, Sujana Stephen, Ambali CS, Dr. Preeta Nair, Dr. Rajesh Sri, Abhen, Dr. Vinod, Dr. Sheena, Ranjesh Lal, former students, research assistants of the Department of Archaeology, who have contributed in a large way towards the excavations and exploration at Vizhinjam. I thank them all, and thanks to Dr. Salva Kumar also for inviting me to present this lecture. These are further readings. Thank you all. Stay safe, stay happy.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Ajit Kumar. There are some questions available in the chat. Can you read them by yourself? Yeah. There are some questions available. Can you read and answer? Yeah. Or Kaushik can do that. Kaushik?
Yeah, I will do that. I'll do that.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. Kaushik will read and you can answer. Yeah, please.
Okay. So the first question is, what is the date of the fortification? The second question is, any inscribed
Kaushik, one by one.
Okay. So all right. So we will take questions one by one. So first question is, what is the date of the fortification, sir?
The fortification, the early, because there is reference to fortification in the Pandya records, which date to 8th century. So obviously that fortification was in position at least by 8th century. So 7th, 8th century would be the date of the fortification. So it happens also to be the earliest fortification of a local dynasty from Kerala. But however, it is, in very bad condition or very shambles condition as today. And it's not been protected also, despite all these years. It has been found and reported. It has not been protected.
Okay. The next question is by Sridharan. The first question is, any inscribed potsherds which have been found? And the second,
no inscribed potsherds have been found.
Somebody's
Still, I think Atul Krishna Kumar, please mute your audio, please. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah. So any inscribed potsherds? So the answer is that no. The excavation has not come across any inscribed potsherds. The second question, or rather, it's a comment that is the red related ware is similar to Azagankulam or Alagankulam, as we know. And the third comment is also that the ship unloading horses in Tirupudaimarudar painting. Again, by
it is Tirupudaimarudar. Tirupudaimarudar temple in Tirunelveli has a painting. Apart from this, John Deloche from French Institute, actually École Française, he has published a book on that. The book is available in French Institute. So that gives you a very beautiful illustration. You can include that also. Thank you.
Yes. So I have some comments and some questions, sir. Professor Kumar, Ajit Kumar. It was a very interesting talk for me because we are working in Bengal and we are excavating near the ancient site of Tamilakam. Professor Selva Kumar has been to that region several times. So one comment and one observation is very clear that in that slide in which you showed that roulated ware, above it there was a gray sherd, possibly with rounded or beaked rim. And it is exactly like the ones that we find in Bengal, particularly at Tamluk, Chandraketugarh, and also in Mahasthangarh. Colin Lefranc has published an article on that in the book that has been edited. One of the editors is myself. So it seems that at this site there was also connection even with possibly with the Ganges Delta and even beyond. Mahasthangarh is basically in Bangladesh, with which you basically link the Assam Valley also. So we can think about a connectivity even beyond the Arabian Sea and the western coast of India. I think that is very, very interesting. Because from Kerala, from Tamil Nadu, we have come across several sherds like this, which Colin Lefranc is she's calling them bichrome pottery because they have a typical grayish surface with red blotches.
Exactly.
Possibly, yes. So she's calling it the bichrome pottery, and she's also finding the same pottery, I think, in some of the Southeast Asian sites. So I think that is a very interesting clue in which we are looking at a very wider network, sir. So what are your thoughts on that? And secondly, can you kindly show me the slide again of the Shanza Chinese ware, because they are again, at times they are at times confused with the Martaban Burmese jar at times. So even from Bengal coast, we are finding some of them. So since you have a first-hand knowledge, so we can exchange some ideas about it. So these are my two comments and your observation on if you can think about a wider network, not only with the western coast and the Arabian Sea, but also with the Bengal Delta, beyond, even with Southeast Asia. That's very important, sir. So I would like your comment on this.
Thank you, after these questions, I'll read out. There are some questions on Facebook. Yeah, first, please answer or make your comments on.
The first point about that pottery, we've got very few sherds of it, hardly 3 or 4. And the clay is very, very fine clay it is. And it is probably a dish-like thing, according to the sherd that is found. It looks like a dish. Only the rim portion is available, but it's not like the other local pottery which is found. The material is very, very fine. The texture of the clay is very fine, and we have also got along with it some pottery, which is reported by KP Rao from Kottapatnam and things like those embossed type of pottery. But again,
Yes.
preliminary indications of in the petrological studies done by Dr. Krishnan, there seems to be some sort of indication that some are not typically local. So now,
Yes.
what
Yes.
exactly is the
Yes.
place of origin is again
Yes.
that would it be very interesting. But petrological
Yes.
studies do indicate that they are not. Some of the shirts are
Yes.
not typically
Yes.
local. That is one
Yes.
thing. And now coming to
Yes.
the presentation, Shanza ware is typical. What I showed you as a comparative thing is found from a shipwreck recently in close to Indonesia, where
Is
that
it Belitung?
Yes.
Belitung? No. Belitung
I
red?
don't
No.
I don't
Yeah.
remember the name of the place.
Okay. There is one
It is from
Belitung rock.
Indonesian. This thing it close to Indonesia. Somebody had shipwreck had yielded that particular.
Okay.
Okay.
There are some questions on
Now
Facebook.
this
Shall
is the
I read
Shanza
them out?
pottery which I was talking about.
Yeah.
The ones
Okay.
which
So
you notice that
can,
particular this
yes.
particular
Yeah.
Shanza ware, which is these are the shards of this. This is the sprout which you see spout.
Yeah.
And these are
Can we
the
see?
decorations
Yes.
which you notice. This is the details of the decoration. The handle portion
Yeah.
of which also
Yeah.
which we have found. So
Mm.
that is one particular thing. And this is the
I mean,
Shanza typical bowl,
okay.
or
Yeah.
with that ring base, and you have this four corners with this this brown sort of design. So this is typical of this
So
intact piece has been found from a shipwreck in the Indonesian waters.
in the
And
water.
these designs are very typical of Shanza pottery of the Tang period,
Mm.
which dates to 9th century, and it perfectly matches with the Aya as a ruling there
Mm.
in Vizhinja.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I read out the Facebook question now?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Jaya G. Nair, is any evidence obtained of a local trading community living at Vizhinjam during Sangam period? She is asking about local trading community living at Vizhinjam. Yes.
Now, local community living at Vizhinjam, as such, from inscriptions, there are one or two evidences that have come out that clearly says that um, that settis in the temples which I had earlier mentioned, there is an inscription by two settis from Vizhinjam. The title setti which is used in that particular name clearly shows that they are actually traders. And interestingly, for some reasons, the Ayas had perpetuated all religious communities at equal flavor. So we have, they are contributing to Buddhist cause. They have contributed to the Jain temples at Chitral. They have contributed to the Sri Mulavasam, which was an important Buddhist center. They donate land. So they had actually, some people would say that when Hinduism started developing as a strong religion, people would not venture out into sea for trade. So the external trade was handled by the Jains and the Buddhists. So there are theories that have been propounded in similar fashion. So it's quite possible that the external trade was handled by these settis who have contributed to temple building and other activities in Kerala. So no much of evidence of individual names from Vizhinjam is there. And like I told you, there was an inscription which mentions of a warrior who died during a war. There is a name of Chief Iron Smith who was based in Vizhinjam. Such occurrences are there, but common even in the temples which you notice at Vizhinjam, there is no donative record as such. So we do not know who actually contributed towards it. Could be traders because it's located very close to the trading point there.
Okay. The next question is from Ambili Ananova. Is there any archaeological or inscription evidence of attack of Oi or Chera rulers by the Pandya and Chola rulers? Yeah. She's asking, is there any inscription evidence for the Chola Pandya attack? And also means apart from Vizhinjam, did they attack any other place other than Vizhinjam? And what is the inscriptional reference?
Yes, in inscriptional references, like I stated earlier, there is no mention of a single king who was defeated by Pandyas or Cholas. They have not given individual names to kings. Sometimes they mention that I was defeated. Sometimes they would say Cheras or Malanad was defeated. And it is not only Vizhinjam that they had attacked, because as I stated earlier, all the important trading points under the Chera territory of Malaynad was invaded and attacked by the forces of. Initially, the Pandyas limited their attack to the port at Vizhinjam and Kollam, but the Cholas, who became powerful, they attacked all the major ports of the right from Kottar in now in Kanyakumari district to Vizhinjam, then to Kollam and Mahadevarpattanam or Kodungalur area. All these cities were attacked, looted, burnt, and the wealth of this particular region were taken to Tamil Nadu. That is available in inscriptions, in many inscriptions. Pandya and Chola inscriptions, we get reference to such activities.
Okay, next question is from Ambili. What is the earliest evidence of torpedo jar? And there is one more question from Jayaji Nair. It could be also combined. Where could be the torpedo jars have come from? Yeah.
The torpedo jar has a West Asian origin, so that has been found from so many. So West Asian origin of torpedo jar is already been confirmed. It has been found from Anuradhapura excavations. It has been found. So torpedo jar has a West Asian origin.
Okay, kindly mute your video, Kaushik, or others.
Yeah.
Video. Sorry, audio. Sorry. Okay, there was some next question. What is the date of the earliest torpedo jar?
Dating torpedo jar is a very tricky issue because this has been found from Anuradhapura. So in Anuradhapura excavations, they date the early ones to around 4th century AD onwards. They date torpedo jar. And torpedo jars are something which they have continued for quite some time in making and in circulation. So to date them very precisely to one particular this thing is very difficult, but they start emerging from around 3rd, 4th century onwards. They start emerging in the trade circuits, and it has been reported from Anuradhapura by in Dr. Cunningham's excavation. He has also reported, but again, people are very scared to assign a typical date to it because many of the excavated sites, especially the coastal sites, they don't give you a typical stratigraphy which you find in other sites. So it becomes tricky because basically the material looks one and the same. Only the layer looks more or the texture is almost uniform. Only the material contents vary. So people are scared to assign dates. But nevertheless, I think from 3rd, 4th century onwards, it makes its impact. Then at least it continues to around 6th, 7th century for sure. Along with this.
From which level iron objects were recovered? From which level iron objects were?
Most of the iron objects which you have recovered right from very early phase, that is associated from the Rowlatt period to the ones which is associated with the 8th, 9th century, we have got material. And most of the material which we found, iron objects and tiles, were close to the temple site which was there. So the trench which we put very close to the temple had yielded this sort of thing. So not from the other areas. Most of the iron material and tiles go together.
Next question is there any residual analysis done on the torpedo jar to determine what they held?
Yeah, residual studies have been undertaken on the bitumen which is there. So I have not spoken on it because it would be coming in the report which has been published. It's basically bitumen. It has not come out with any specific conclusion as to what would have been transported, but the bitumen also clearly states that it is of West Asian origin. That is all.
Okay, is there any evidence which talks about tax collection? This is from G. Manikandan. Any evidence of tax collection at Vizhinjam? Any inscription? Probably he is asking.
No, there is
inscription
no
of that.
inscription. As I stated categorically, there are no inscriptions from Vizhinjam which speak about the trade. But we have contemporary inscriptions. From 8th, 9th century, we have inscriptions of the Vena dynasty, especially the Tarasapalli copper plate that mentions about the tax which is applicable for material which is brought into the market, which goes out of the market. Such things are mentioned in Tarasapalli copper plate, which is almost contemporaneous to the Aya dynasty's rule in Vizhinjam.
Yeah. The next
So
question is:
Vizhinjam has
can we have a list of temples that were presented? I mean, that you spoke about. List of temples. Rahul Thomas is asking the list of temples that you were showing. Names. Can you give the names of the temples? Yeah, that's what he is asking. Yeah.
In the names of the temple.
There's one rocket cave, a rocket temple.
A rocket cave, that is just it doesn't have any specific name as such. The other one was known as Ayakudi temples, which I showed you was which is broken down, and then there are actually the Devi and Shiva in another area close to the beach. There are three temples. These temples which are now broken away, they are just known as Ayakudi temples. It was not under worship, so I don't remember any specific name of that particular being assigned to that temple. The other one is known as basically Ayakudi temple. I think even now it is known as Ayakudi temple.
Okay. Also, I have a question. I think this is the last question. You mentioned about Pandya's stationing there for 10 years. This information comes from which text?
It is from an inscription which is found from Kanyakumari region.
Oh, really? Yeah.
That they were camping in the outskirts of Kanyakumari, trying to make an inroad into this thing.
Okay.
It is from Kanyakumari. It is from Towala region, if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
It is in Kanyakumari. I don't remember the exact name of the place from where this inscription is there, but it mentions that that they were camping there in that particular area.
Yeah, I think these are the questions that have been typed. Any of the audience want to ask any question? Any of those who are present in the Zoom room? Okay, I think that's the end of it. Thank you, Professor Ajit Kumar, for accepting our invitation and for delivering the lecture and also patiently answering the questions. And thank you very much on behalf of the participant. And also, I think now you can simply leave the meeting. I think that will close the meeting, or you can go on, click on the participants, click my name, and then make host so that I can close it. That's the last. Yeah, go to participants. Yeah. Click on my name and more, and then make host. Yeah, that's.
Okay. Okay, then thank you.
Professor Ajit Kumar. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day. Yes.
Wish you all the same.
Thank you.
Kaushik, please give the vote of thanks. Sorry, I forgot.
Yes. No, it's okay. It's basically like Professor Selva Kumar said, we are extremely indebted to Professor Ajit Kumar for having accepted our invitation, particularly, and obviously we have to acknowledge Professor Selva Kumar. He is getting in this maritime group together where we are all interested. But your lecture, sir, was very illuminating, particularly for me, because it gives, and if possible, I will send you that article across by Colin Lefranc. And, it shows the wider network that in Indian Ocean network, maritime, riverine, land routes. And we have to look into the pottery also, because it is still not really very worked, really very nicely worked on. So we should all get together, and this group will provide that form possibly in the coming days. So once again, I thank Professor Ajit Kumar, and I thank all the participants for sparing this time. And I hope they continue to support this group, and we will prosper in future. I'm sure about that. Have a good day, and thank you once again, Professor Ajit Kumar.